Tonight we bring you the story of another wrongful conviction, this time out of New Orleans. Kaliegh Smith was released from prison this week after spending 13 and a half years behind bars for a 2007 murder he didn't commit.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today we're going to be doing another case analysis, so let's get into the story of Kaliegh Smith. At around 12:20 p.m. on October 20th, 2007, 27-year-old Jason Anderson, who was known to his friends as Foo, was shot to death in the Little Woods neighborhood of New Orleans, Louisiana. Jason was found by his fiancée only moments later laying in the drive. The shooting occurred in the light of day in a residential area, so there was strong potential for multiple witnesses to piece together the incident and quickly identify the killer. And that they did. There were 5 key witnesses that offered their accounts of what happened. This testimony formed the basis of the court case that followed. New Orleans, Louisiana. On a block on Gervais Street in Little Woods, 2 men are caught up in what would be described as a wild struggle outside on the drive. Jason Anderson's shirt would be grabbed by the attacker while they struggle with each other. The fight comes to a close when Jason is shot 4 times by a Smith & Wesson 9mm pistol at the range of more than 2.5 feet. Kaliegh Smith, age 31 at the time, was identified as the shooter and taken in for questioning 4 days later. He was indicted on murder charges on the 20th of December of the same year and stood trial over the months of January and February 2010. Examining the case against Smith, we begin with the individual that we will dub Witness 1 for the sake of our examination here. Cynthia Shesby spoke to the police on the day of the shooting. Cynthia said that she was an eyewitness to the shooting. She was visiting her daughter at her residence across the street from the scene. First, she spoke with Detective Carter and told him that she was inside the house when the shooting occurred. She would later clarify that she was not inside the house, but under the carport directly across the street when the shooting occurred. She heard what she thought were firecrackers. She went closer to the street to investigate the noise, and she witnessed the incident. She yelled at the attacker to stop and then placed a 911 call giving information about the shooting and a description of the suspect. As the shooter was running away from the scene in the direction of Goretti Park, he and Cynthia looked at each other in the eye. From that meeting, she recognized Kaliegh Smith. 4 days later, on the 24th of October, the day that Smith would be arrested, Cynthia formally identified him in a photographic lineup as the man that she saw shoot Jason Anderson. Cynthia Shesby testified that she knew Smith and she was 100% sure he committed the crime. Returning home after an appointment about noon, Jason's fiancée, Latasha Horace, was in her bedroom when she heard gunfire. We'll call Latasha Witness 2. She ran to the window and saw Kaliegh Smith running from the area. As he ran, Smith turned around, which gave Latasha a view of his face. She said he was wearing a red long-sleeve t-shirt and black pants. Latasha then ran outside to see if there was a car passing by, and she then noticed Jason, who was lying on the ground bleeding. She ran to him, but he was unable to speak. Latasha would testify that on the day before the shooting, Jason had told her that he wanted to change his telephone number because he did not want Kaliegh Smith calling him anymore. According to her testimony, she met with a detective on the evening of the shooting and told him that Kaliegh Smith had shot Jason. Our third witness is Melvin Noah. He knew both Jason Anderson and Kaliegh Smith from the neighborhood. He had known Jason for approximately 7 years at the time of the shooting. According to Melvin, the day Jason died, he had called Melvin and asked him if he had seen Kaliegh Smith. When Melvin replied no, Jason had asked him to tell Kaliegh to call him because he was waiting on him. Melvin then asked Jason where he was, and Jason responded that he was waiting about 2 blocks away from his house. A call was verified via call logs of those made to and from Jason Anderson's phone that day. The log showed that the call was made at 12:10 p.m., approximately 10 minutes before Jason Anderson was shot. Witness 4 is a New Orleans police officer, April Moses, who lived on the block on Gervais Street where the shooting took place. She and her children were outside cutting grass when she heard a few gunshots. After putting her kids in the house, she walked out to the sidewalk, and about a minute later, she heard a car screeching and saw it turn onto her street. The car passed in front of her, and she noticed that there were 3 people in the car: the driver, a front seat passenger, and one in the back seat. As the car approached the corner, it did not stop, but slowed enough to allow the 2 passengers to jump from the vehicle. One of the passengers ran in one direction, and the second ran in another. Officer Moses described the passengers as 2 black males. One's hair was done in dreadlocks, and the other had a low haircut. One had on a white t-shirt, while the other wore a long red sleeved shirt. Approximately 1 month before Jason was killed, he told his father, Mitchell Anderson, that there was a $5,000 bounty on his head for something he had done in Texas. Jason apparently told his father that it was Kaliegh Smith who had informed him of the bounty. Jason had also said Kaliegh wouldn't do anything about this because Jason was close to the mother of Kaligh's child. Mitchell would further testify that approximately 2 weeks later, Jason told him that an unknown person had shot at him, but made clear that the incident did not have anything to do with the bounty on his head. A day or two after the shooting, Mitchell says he told police that he believed Kaliegh Smith was involved. Mitchell said he recognized Smith because he had seen him at Jason's house, and also because Smith had bought and sold drugs with his son Jason. So far, it's looking like a solid case against Smith. Aside from the New Orleans police officer, the witnesses identifying him are going on more than just a moment's view. They recognized him because they actually knew him. So let's take a look at the defense. Smith said he had slept at his mother's house the night before and had gotten up around 9 a.m. He and his brother Ronald had left the house to buy heroin and then returned where they had remained for the rest of the day. His wife stopped at his mother's house around noon, and later that day, a friend of his also came to the house. This friend told him that Fu, Jason Anderson, had been shot and killed. Smith's wife said her husband was saddened and confused by the news. The two remained at the house for several more hours that day into the evening. Ronald's account of their activities that day support the same story. Smith's lawyers would argue that given the apparent bounty on Jason Anderson's life, that a neighborhood hitman who was known at the time should have been the focus of the police investigation, but was not considered a suspect. Smith's wife and brother place him at his mother's house at the time of the shooting. These two individuals have an obvious bias, so it's logical to grant more weight to the independent witnesses. Witness 1, Cynthia Shesby, however, would have a few holes revealed in her credibility in the years after the initial trial. The signs were there straight out the gate. Shesby immediately made clear that she feared for her safety after witnessing the murder. She was so frightened and fearful that she left the city that day to return to her home in Georgia. On her way out of town, she was interviewed by police, but not at the station. It was done on the side of the highway. Once in Atlanta, she was presented with a photographic lineup in which Smith's photo appeared with a lighter filtered background than all the filler suspects. She identified Smith as the shooter. Then, days before her testimony in January 2010, she actually recanted her identification of Smith as the triggerman. In February, the trial would resume when she changed her mind yet again. She told jurors she backed off her idea of Smith before the trial initially, not because he was innocent, but because of threatening phone calls from someone at the New Orleans jail. She was now 100% certain that Smith had shot Jason Anderson. The thing is, Shesby's phone records from February 2010, for the day that the threatening phone calls from the New Orleans jail were apparently received, were obtained through a post-trial subpoena, and it turns out no such call was received that day. So, if not for overcoming her own fear from a threat, what could account for the flip-flopping in her idea of Smith? Now, it may be related to rental payments made for her by the district attorney's office leading up to the trial that were not disclosed to the defense team. Internal records would show that the DA's Victim Witness Assistance Division made $2,500 in payments on her behalf while the case was pending in 2008. In a much later affidavit, Shesby recalls she was told she could get whatever I needed after the trial. The whatever she needed would amount to an additional $2,000 in housing assistance. If not motivation enough, on the day she testified, prosecutors told the woman she could either go to court or go to jail. Prosecutors had told her about a warrant for her arrest and threatened her with jail if she did not testify. Witness 1 reported more than flip-flopping accounts of what she saw that day. Shesby told the officers about a recent altercation between Anderson and another man, a potential alternate suspect. This person was about the same height as the man Shesby described as the shooter, had ties to the neighborhood, and was suspected of being involved in other murders. The police did not vigorously pursue that lead, and this information from Shesby, while in the detective's notes, did not make it into the official case file. So we're going to jump a bit out of order here, but for good reason, because the ordering of witnesses in this case, as you'll see, is not insignificant. Our witness 3, Melvin, met Jason Anderson through his fiancée, Latasha, who was our witness 2. Melvin spoke with Jason only 10 minutes before the shooting and supplied us with the knowledge that Jason was waiting, at that moment, for none other than Kaliegh Smith. Well, the phone log indicates that Kaligh's cell phone number appeared in Jason's cell phone directory, but it does not show any calls from that number on the day of the shooting. This is a bit odd, of course, because the call from Melvin to Jason 10 minutes before the shooting did occur. But if that conversation related to Jason asking about Kaliegh, as Melvin had stated, why did Jason not simply call him? Kaligh's number was saved in his phone. So what do we have to consider about Latasha's testimony? Melvin had spoken with Latasha the day after the shooting and had told her about having received the call from Jason shortly before the shooting. At that time, Latasha had given him no indication that she thought Kaliegh Smith was involved in the shooting of her fiancé. So that's curious, but it also raises the possibility that the information about the phone call may have influenced Latasha's ID of Smith later on. Melvin testified that he did not know there was a hit out on the victim, nor did he know of any animosity between Jason and Smith. He was also with her when an unknown male, approximately 19 years old, delivered Jason's cell phone. They checked the cell phone at the time, but found the phone's memory log had been erased. When looking at this eyewitness ID specifically, two factors are worth considering. The first is the timing of the actual interviews of the witnesses by police. The interview in which Latasha identifies Smith as the shooter does not occur on the day of the shooting, alongside or simultaneous to our other witnesses. She phoned police to ID Smith as the killer the day following the shooting. Indeed, this phone call occurred in the company of Melvin following their conversation. A staff investigator at the New Orleans Public Defender's Office testified that in anticipation of trial, she had taken photographs and measurements at Latasha's house. This staff member identified several photographs of the general vicinity of the crime scene taken by her from the window where Latasha had been standing when she had observed the defendant running away from the scene of the shooting. The investigator reported that she had been unable to take a full range of pictures from the window because a bed and another piece of furniture had blocked her access to one side of the window, which limited her line of sight. Mitchell Anderson's testimony also came under scrutiny in the years following Smith's conviction. In 4 interviews with prosecutors between the 20th of December 2007 and the 4th of January 2010, he never mentioned his son knowing anything about Smith. 2 days after Mitchell was told that the state's case was in peril because Shesby was hesitant to testify, well, now his story changed. Now he said that Kaliegh Smith was the one that had told his son about the $5,000 bounty on his head. He also said initially he had never met Smith. At trial, he said he had seen Smith at his son's house. Convenient? And what about our witness 4, you ask? Well, this is the New Orleans police officer, Officer Moses, that was at home with her children when suspicious men sped off following gunshots. Her account is descriptive, and so it provides a framework in which the other, now somewhat questionable witness accounts will align. There is no reason to believe that she did not see exactly what she described, but she does not ID Smith as either the shooter or one of the men she sees fleeing the scene. She sees a total of 3 men. The 2 that flee the vehicle she is able to describe. One with a low haircut and one had dreadlocks. One wore a white t-shirt and one wore a long-sleeved red shirt. On the afternoon of the 25th of October 2007, 5 days after the murder, Smith's mother's house was searched and 2 red t-shirts were confiscated. These were tested for the presence of human blood. The test results were negative. Ronald said his brother was wearing a black or white t-shirt that day, but that the police took his brother's 2 red shirts. Attorneys filed a petition for post-conviction DNA testing of the physical evidence, principally Anderson's t-shirt. Smith was eliminated as a source of that DNA. In July 2008, the police recovered a gun, which testing later confirmed was the murder weapon used to kill Jason Anderson. It was a Smith & Wesson 9mm semi-automatic pistol. The cartridges recovered from the Anderson crime scene had been fired from that particular pistol. The gun had been recovered in connection with another shooting which took place in June of that year. A man named Burnell Campbell was arrested and charged for that shooting. Mr. Campbell had dreadlocks at the time of his arrest. The New Orleans Parish District Attorney Leon Cannizzaro, under whom Kaliegh Smith was convicted, was replaced in January 2020. His replacement, Jason Williams, quickly set up a civil rights division, which was tasked with reviewing potential wrongful convictions and split jury verdicts. And in May of that year, his office filed a response to Smith's petition, put forward by the New Orleans Innocence Project, to have new evidence considered, telling a judge that they agreed with defense attorneys that their office engaged in misconduct and that Smith was entitled to a new trial. Smith's conviction was overruled in late May. In June, the DA's office decided not to pursue a retrial against Smith, dropping the charges against him. Judge Pittman made it clear that her ruling was based only on Williams' concession about evidence being withheld, and not on separate defense claims related to the DNA testing or to Smith's conviction by a split jury.
In May, a judge ordered that Smith be granted a new trial and released from prison on bond due to prosecutorial misconduct. It was only this week, however, that Smith was in fact released from prison, and New Orleans DA Jason Williams decided not to retry the case, declaring Smith exonerated.
So that's it for this case. It ends in an exoneration. What do you guys think? Witness testimony seems precarious at best. How many more individuals are serving life sentences based on the best recollections of well-intentioned witnesses? Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Kevin, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.